So the theatre of the absurd just gets more and more ridiculous by the day, and you know, if people don't start waking up after this Osama bin Laden killing tall tale, then I'm starting to think that we really are in trouble and we really are doomed, because the whole thing is just so outrageous and so obviously a massive hoax that people who are accepting the government story are really, you know, beyond reach in my opinion. Of course, this all started with the announcement of bin Laden's killing, which is dodgy enough in itself, being as there is loads of evidence to suggest that he's been dead for a number of years. We all know this. I'll put a link in the info box below to an article by David Ray Griffin, which goes over all of the evidence for his death. But you know, if the government had produced his body and, you know, clear evidence of his having been killed in that compound, you know, I would have been happy to accept that if it was conclusive evidence, because, you know, the reports of bin Laden's death years ago, they could be wrong. Let's be honest, they could be wrong. But no, what did the government do straight away? 12 hours after bin Laden's supposed killing, they ferried his body away to the Arabian Sea and buried him in the sea. I mean, you know, the absurdity of this explanation is just almost beyond belief, to be honest. I mean, we also saw how the mainstream media, you know, faithfully parroted the official line. Keelan Bolderson did a good video showing how they were pushing the idea that this burial at sea was some kind of Muslim tradition, when in fact it isn't at all. I'll put a link to that video in the info box below as well. In fact, all through this absurd episode, we've seen the mainstream media acting as lapdogs for the government, faithfully just repeating the government line with very little questioning, faithfully joining in with the smearing of anybody who dares to ask for evidence as a conspiracy theorist. You know, imagine that. Somebody makes a very bold claim, you quite rightly ask them for some evidence to support their claim, and they say to you, no, I'm not going to provide it, because if I did, you wouldn't believe it anyway, because you're a conspiracy theorist. That's the level of absurdity that we've reached now, that anybody who dares to question their government is labelled a conspiracy theorist, or an extremist, which was a quote from a US official. He actually said the only people who are skeptical and who are asking to see photos of bin Laden's bodies are extremists. So that means me and a lot of the people listening to this video, we are extremists. You know, no doubt before much longer we'll be domestic terrorists. And the whole incident is just farcical. We had the reports of bin Laden being armed, and the mainstream media faithfully reproduced this story and knocked up little images of bin Laden holding an AK-47. We had the reports of bin Laden's wife shielding him and bin Laden, evil to the very end, cowering behind this defenseless woman to try and save himself. And of course this all turned out to be absolute nonsense. He apparently now wasn't armed, you know, whoever he was. I don't think it was bin Laden. But the story's just changed completely. Now we learn that Obama and the White House staff weren't watching the events in real time, which was the original story. And, you know, as soon as I saw that photograph of Hillary Clinton and Obama and Biden and Gates sitting in the Situation Room, I just thought, this is completely staged. This is part of the massive hoax, which is the Osama bin Laden death. And it's since turned out that they weren't watching live footage of the attack on the compound, because there was a 25-minute delay on the Navy SEALs cameras that were recording, you know, the attack. So no one quite knows what they were watching, and Hillary Clinton today has made some bizarre excuse of why she was covering her mouth with her hand as if she would look shocked. She said that she was probably stifling a cough caused by an allergy. You know, the lies that are being spewed out now are relentless, and they're becoming increasingly more absurd. So yeah, the whole thing is just outrageous. I mean, I put a video out yesterday saying why there's really no excuse for those photos to be released, and yeah, of course there are going to be lots of people who simply don't believe those photographs, but that's not a reason not to release them. And where's the video footage of the death of bin Laden, which these Navy SEALs filmed? You know, we've got no body, we've got no visual evidence, we've simply got the government's word that they took DNA from bin Laden, you know, which is suspicious enough in itself because you can't carry out a DNA test within 24 hours, so what's that all about? And it's just getting quite extreme, guys. I mean, I don't know what we do from here, really. You know, this has made me even more sure of my own beliefs. It really has determined in my mind that we're living in a complete fantasy world where we cannot trust anything that the government tells us. And the people who believe the government and who are labelling people who are asking for evidence as conspiracy theorists, you know, there just has to be something wrong with them, really. And there are a lot of people doing it, especially on the comments to news articles and things like that. So I don't know what the consensus is on this. I mean, I've heard reports, you know, from friends that they're pretty suspicious. People who aren't even into this whole conspiracy stuff, they find the whole episode pretty suspicious. And what's going to happen? We'll have to wait and see. But if this passes, and if the White House gets away with this, I think it's very concerning, to say the least. So yeah, guys, that's all I've got to say today, really. You know, not too much new information or anything. I just had to get a few things off my chest and have a bit of a rant, really, because, you know, I do get angry about some of the stuff that goes on, and other times I'm just left completely bemused by it, which is the case in this situation. And just have to really yeah, get those things off my chest. So let me know what you think about this whole thing. Let me know what you think is going to happen next. I mean, I'm not one to fearmonger, but there has been a lot of talk of a new terror attack because of what's happened. Anjem Chowdhury, the mainstream media's favourite Muslim extremist in the UK, has been saying that there's likely going to be another 7/7. I watched Michael Chertoff on the news the other night, and he was talking about a possible attack towards the 10-year anniversary of 9/11. Of course, we had the WikiLeaks reports, which came out just days before the apparent killing of bin Laden, which said that Al-Qaeda would set off a nuclear device in Europe if bin Laden was killed. And I have to say about WikiLeaks, you know, I've tried to remain fairly neutral on them. I've never said that I thought they were a front operation for the CIA, because I didn't feel there was enough evidence. But I think I'm prepared to say now that, you know, information is definitely being fed to WikiLeaks, if they are genuine, to guide the propaganda that's being put out by the government. That was one example, with the stuff about the nuclear weapons in Europe. And there was another one that I read just yesterday, which was a leaked WikiLeaks document which talked about how the US government had discussed much earlier about what to do with photographs of dead terrorists, which to my mind simply made the government's decision not to release the bin Laden photos less suspicious, because it wasn't just a sudden decision, it had been talked about for some time, and that came out through WikiLeaks, you know, again supporting the government story. So yeah, I mean, I'm starting to think that, you know, information is being fed to WikiLeaks to guide the narrative, basically. Yeah, that's it for today, guys. Thanks for listening. Cheers.